Hi, Hannah. It's really great to meet with you today to go through this Q&A. Um, I'm just going to start off with a bit of an introduction for yourself, if that's all right, if you don't mind just letting everyone know who you are, where you work, and what your role is as well.
So I'm Hannah Taylor. I am the SARC manager for the Glade, which is the West Mercia Sexual Assault Referral Centre. We have we cover the whole of West Mercia as an area, and we have two sites, one which is in Wellington and Telford, so up in Shropshire, and then another one that's down in Worcestershire, and we cover that whole area of West Mercia.
Amazing, great. And do you mind telling us a bit more about what the Glade does? What are they as an organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're a sexual assault referral centre, which means that historically, before there ever was a sexual assault referral centre, should I say, we've been open for 11 years. And pre that, the options within West Mercia were that people reported a rape or a sexual assault to the police. And as part of that process, the police would progress a medical, but there wasn't a designated centre for people to be taken to for medical examinations. And that's effectively what was produced within West Mercia 11 years ago. So we are a specialist centre where if someone reports an assault to the police and it's something that's happened recently, they would be offered the option of being brought to the SARC for a medical examination. And ultimately, that means that they would be seen by a specialist examiner who can take forensic samples, provide options, give choices to people, give power and control back to people about what they want to happen. And that's a really important thing because they've had power and control taken away from them. So we physically see people when it's something that's happened recently because of the offering of the medical. A really key part of the SARC is that if somebody doesn't want to involve the police or they're not sure, they want to kind of know what their options are, they can absolutely contact us as a self-referral, potentially come in for a medical examination, have forensic evidence taken from them and stored. So ultimately, for people who don't want to report to the police, don't know what they want in terms of kind of their options, the what next, it can be quite daunting to go to the police and report such a serious offence. And so ultimately, people have that option to come to us as a self-referral, have a medical examination, have samples taken, forensic evidence, and we can look to store that for 2 years. And it gives people time to think about their options. It gives people a bit of breathing space. So we obviously can't make what's happened to them go away, but we can hopefully help with discussing options for people, potentially them having that medical, and it gives them some breathing space. And then we can look to put other things in place and make onward referrals that can help support them. And some people may never ever want to then go on to report to the police, and that's okay. They've got that option. We've obviously got those samples. We can keep them for up to 2 years. But ultimately, yeah, with our self-referral line, for those people that haven't reported and want to know their options, they can call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So ultimately they can call, they can find out what their options are. That might be a medical, it might be that they don't want a medical or it's not appropriate. And ultimately they can have the option of discussing onward referrals to support them longer term.
Thank you for that. It's really great to know that there is no kind of criteria that you have to be reporting to the police, that you can still access the service and kind of get that information before you make that decision. And as you said, it's 2 years is a really good amount of time for someone to have to actually think properly and thoroughly about what they want to do. So I know you mentioned about the service if someone has experienced an incident recently. When you say recently, is there a specific like time frame for that? Is it kind of a rough idea on how recent the incident might have happened before coming to the service?
Yeah, so there's different timescales that are set out in terms of forensic recovery. The longest time frame is 7 days, and to human beings that don't work within this field, people don't know timescales. So obviously when they contact us, we want to make sure that we ask enough information, but not too much information because we don't want to cause people further distress, but enough information to ascertain whether it's appropriate to offer that medical. But it can be up to 7 days post an assault that we would be looking to invite somebody in. It just depends upon what has happened and us discussing those options with them.
That's really helpful to know, because as you said, people don't know, do they, until they kind of need to start using these services. And it can make quite a big difference, can't it, in terms of what support might be the right support for them. If someone self-referred, for example, to the Glade, but you felt that actually it had been a bit too long since the incident had happened, what happens then? Do you refer them onwards to someone else, or kind of signpost to them?
Absolutely. So we get a lot of people, it might have happened years ago, and so they're not obviously within what we would call the forensic window to physically see them. So anybody that is out of the forensic window or doesn't want a medical, some people will call up and they're in what we call the forensic window. They have that option of a medical, but they just don't want to go through with that. So whether it's something that's happened recently and they don't want a medical, or something that's happened weeks, months, or years ago, with those people, it's about understanding or giving them options again. Have they reported to the police? When we ask that question, explains to them we're not asking that because we think they should report. We're asking that because it's appropriate, and explaining that to them is it would be appropriate for us to talk about ISVA if they were thinking about reporting, even if it was years ago, and discussing things like counselling. So again, it's the same support and onward referrals that we would make for somebody if they physically come into us. And sometimes you offer all of those things and someone says, thank you, I don't want anything further, but I wanted to know what my options were. And again, it's about saying to them, okay, if you would like any of those onward referrals, please contact us back, or would you like us to call you? And sometimes it's just taking it back to listening to that person. What were they hoping to get out of contacting us? And it might be we've talked about ISVA or counselling or something like that, and there's something specific that they've called us about that they want to ask, or they would like us to link in with a particular agency. And that's absolutely fine. Again, it's back to tailoring it to that individual. Obviously, we've got a whole host of things that we can look to offer in terms of onward referrals, but that person, listening to them, what do they want, empowering them, giving them options, and yeah, taking it at their pace.
Thanks so much for just clarifying that, because I think again, sometimes when people reach out to a service, we're not kind of looking at all the finer information, are we, about what support they actually have, what they do. So it's really helpful and just really reassuring, I think, to know that even if, as you said, a forensic medical examination isn't maybe the most appropriate or relevant thing at the moment, you'll still have support and you'll still be put in touch with the right people to support you with what you actually do need and what you want. Who can access the Glade for support, and how might they access it?
Okay, yeah, so our service is predominantly 18 plus. So people who are 18 years and above, we are the adult service. There is a specific paediatric service for anybody under 18. However, people who are 16 and 17 years old may opt to come through our service potentially as well. So we would just look at, we wouldn't see anybody under the age of 16, but 16 and above is the option for people to be able to come to us. And how people access us. So we don't just say to people, turn up. Obviously, we need to make sure that we've got the appropriate people on site. So that would include, obviously, a specially trained examiner and a crisis worker who would advocate for that client when they come to us and be able to support them. And we obviously want to, we're very mindful of confidentiality. We don't want there to be a crossover of our clients. So how people refer to us is using our 24-hour self-referral line. It might be that they are fearful of making that call initially themselves, and so it may be that they look to a friend or a professional to make that call, and would absolutely accept a call from somebody else that's maybe with that victim, and ultimately just check with that victim they're happy for that other person to be liaising with us. Maybe they're on loudspeaker, anything that might make that process for that person contacting us and finding out information a bit smoother, we're completely open to. So yeah, that could be a professional within uni, it could be they presented to sexual health or their GP, or just confided in a friend and a friend's called on their behalf with them, and that's absolutely fine. And we've got with that 24-hour self-referral line, our crisis workers man that, so they are specially trained, they've got information to hand ready to discuss those options with that caller.
And the crisis worker, so obviously they kind of, it sounds like they're there from that first point of contact. What does their support look like after that? Is that their main role, or do they support the person using the service through like explaining the forensic examination, for example, and what happens next?
So if it's somebody calling on the telephone, they discuss the options and they'll look to arrange either asking us within the office to follow up that person and make onward referrals if they're not physically coming in, or that crisis work on the telephone may be the person that the client is supported by when the client attends the service. So yes, when somebody comes into us, the crisis worker will be there to explain their role and that they are solely there to advocate for that victim. That might look like hand holding, that might look like distraction techniques, which it can be a multitude of things. That might look like sometimes sitting in silence because that's what that victim wants and needs to get through the whole process. So they are there to read that person who's in front of them and effectively do whatever they need to support them. And that's also empowering them that actually if at any point they don't want to go any further, they don't want the medical, they've changed their mind, or they want something, some samples taken and not others, then the crisis worker is there to explain that. And also the crisis worker is there to also explain the examiner won't do anything that client doesn't want to happen. So obviously the examiner will talk about that as well, but effectively that crisis worker is there for that duration of that client being at the SARC and having their examination. And then when that client is about to leave our service, they're there also to go over all of the consent for onward referrals that client's provided and what that looks like, and that reassurance that normally the next working day, somebody within the office, so that might be myself, I've got a coordinator, it might be one of our embedded examiners, we'll give that client a call, we'll go over all of the things they've consented to, so those onward referrals, and also to just explain the what next. So with the SARC, it's not longer term support. We would look to make those onward referrals so that actually each client is supported longer term.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful to know, because I think the role of a crisis worker sometimes people don't know as much about, and I think it's such an integral role to that process being as doable as possible, given how difficult it can be. And you mentioned there about like onward referrals. What might some of those referrals be? Like, who are those partners that you tend to make referrals to or that you work quite closely with?
So that's the key thing, working quite closely with those partner agencies. So that might look like, in terms of roles and specifics of onward referrals, that would be a referral potentially to an ISVA, so an independent sexual violence advisor. So that's the practical support. If someone's thinking, especially with the self-referrals, even with the self-referrals, someone says, I'm thinking about reporting, what if I do report? What does that look like? What's the police process? Will I be alone if this potentially goes to court later on down the line? So that ISVA is vital, whether somebody comes as a police case or a self-referral, that victim understands what type of support they can provide. And in our area, that would look like a referral to Access Counselling, who also, ironically with the name, also provide longer term specialist counselling. Those are options that we can look to discuss with a client. It's really important whenever we talk about any type of support with any of our clients that we always empower them and explain fully that if you consent to something and then you withdraw your consent, you can do that over and over again. So you might say, or vice versa, if someone says, I don't want ISVA, I've got really good support from uni, from my friends, from my family, that if at any point they change their mind, we can make that happen. We can make a referral to counselling, we can make a referral to ISVA. Another vital one that we discuss with everybody that comes to us is a referral to sexual health, and it's really important that we've got really good links with sexual health so that people aren't sat in walk-in clinics, waiting rooms. It can seem such a daunting thing for people to go to sexual health that it's vital that we, as long as the client is consenting, we will make a referral to sexual health. Sexual health will then know that that client is coming, obviously that, and they will make contact with that client and make sure that there's a time that's suitable for them to come in. They'll fully explain things. We will have information shared. So it means that sexual health aren't asking that client to fully explain things again, reliving that traumatic event and having to tell somebody else about that. It also might look like a notification to their GP. So they might think, right now I'm feeling okay. but weeks or months down the line, they may present to their GP and feel again they have to explain what's happened, who's been involved where. We can notify their GP if they consent to that. Also other services, so domestic abuse services, whether that looks like Shropshire Domestic Abuse Service, whether that looks like Women's Aid, depends upon obviously that victim's circumstances. It might also be substance misuse, mental health services. I pretty much will say we just listen to that person who's in front of us. What do they need? Who are they working with? What would benefit them? And are they happy for us to make those onward referrals? And again, it's back to that. This is what we can do. This is what we'd like to do. These are your options, though. You're in control. What would you like? And listen to that person. And sometimes it might be, again, contacting uni, making sure that they might know that they have got assignments that are due in, that fear of, I don't know whether I can tell anybody, even though obviously you've got specialist people within university, explaining that to them again and reiterating that they're not alone. We can link in with uni. That might then look to open up further support for them. So there's a whole host of onward referrals. But again, the most important thing is listening to that person and understanding how and what we can do for them. And that's very individual to each person.
Yeah, it's such important work. And I think it's so broad, isn't it, in terms of who you might then be working with and supporting, because as you said, everyone using the service has experienced sexual violence, but they're individual people still and with their own support needs following that. It's quite a emotive area to work in, isn't it? It's a difficult topic for many, but I think it would be really great to know what you like, why you do this work, and like why you do it, regardless of the fact that it is a challenging area, and what you enjoy about it.
So I've worked for the SARC since it opened 11 years ago, and obviously I'm the SARC manager, but I think the most enjoyable thing is doing the crisis worker role. So even though I'm the SARC manager, I do cases, I do support clients, I will call them and do follow up. And I think the thing that I enjoy the most is that we see people probably at one of the worst times in their life, and we've got a chance to make a difference. We've got a chance to listen to that person, really empower them, and be there for them fully. And I think that in itself is probably what I get out of bed for every day. That I like to support people. I like to give people options. I like to. I can't make everything better. I can't make it go away. What's happened to them, but I can help make a difference. And I think having the right people, and again supporting my team as well, so making sure we've got the right people, the right examiners that are specialists, the right crisis workers that are listening to our clients and hopefully making a difference, and doing everything we can for those people at their time in need, I think is the most important thing, and the thing that I enjoy the most. And yeah, obviously supporting my staff to do that as well is really important. But yeah, physically, the times when I get to support clients, yeah, that's brilliant. I was going to say, we've worked with some truly amazing people, and every client that comes through, they're obviously individual, very different, and it's working with that client, understanding them, getting on their level, supporting them, being okay with silence. Like I mentioned before, some people, just to get them through that medical, they want silence, and being okay with that and understanding that's what they need and tailoring the whole service to them.
Thank you. It's such important work, and I think it's nice to ask that question, because it is such a serious topic, and it is, as you said, it's for most people accessing the service one of the worst experiences of their life. So having people on the other side who are there to support them through it and do exactly what they need in that moment and moving forward is just so crucial to it. Thanks so much for meeting with us today to just kind of go through that, and just clarify a bit more about the Glade. I think it's just such important work that you do, and again just really highlights how connected the Glade is with all those other services as well. So it's not just we do this and that's it. It's we do this, but if we're not quite right, we will make sure that you know what else there is, what support there is, and we'll not just kind of give you that and go away. So I just think it's so important to know that.
Brilliant, thank you, Katie. The only other key, really most important thing to add is probably our self-referral number. So if anybody that is catching up with this video wants to contact us, find out what their options are for themselves or somebody else, then our self-referral line is 0808 178 2058. I'm sure you can find that within uni if you wanted to, or obviously even looking on our page as well. But just to pop that out there for people, that obviously that's that 24-hour self-referral line that's obviously answered by crisis workers. But thank you very much for having me.